Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, Oregon. Support our work. Make a donation at strpod.com. Thank you for listening to Spent the Rent podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
So I am Patty Rose. Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. My guest today is a candidate for state representative in Oregon and is currently a city councilor in Springfield, Oregon. Kori Rodley. Kori, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. We've done a couple episodes together. I'm a big fan of the work that you do. I've spent time with you off all of the work stuff, like at the chili cook-off and those kind of events that are always really cool. I really want to say that one. That reminds me, make sure that you, if you're interested in politics and you don't know much about it, make sure that you check out the DPLC, the Democratic Party of Lane County, because there's a lot of opportunities to get involved. And what I've learned is nobody gets mad at you if you only show up once a year, because I don't go to meetings or any of that stuff. So it's as much time as you're willing to do. So like I mentioned, you're currently serving as a city councilor in Springfield, running for state representative, looking to step into a seat that's long been held by John Lively, who has been known for his work on economic development, education funding, and supporting local infrastructure in the district. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a big seat. I mean, the Lively Center is the wave pool. He's done a lot of things that are named after him where he's currently in office. And I think that that's an honor that he didn't choose. I think that that's because the people around it are like, let's honor this guy. So at the same time, there's major county races between, for example, in the Springfield area, Sean Van Gordon and David Lovell, along with in North Eugene, one of my good friends, Thomas Yurda, is running against Ryan Senega. And so today what we're going to talk about is the levels of government in a state level. So you got your city, you got your county, and you got your state leadership, and they all connect. And then we're going to talk about what that means for Springfield specifically. So you've been serving as a city councilor. What was the experience that taught you about how local government actually works, and how has it shaped the way that you approach leadership?
This is a great question. I think because I had done so much in the community and I served on the budget committee and I had been like an organizer and worked with organizations that were involved, I already had a good understanding of how government works, and I've only built on that. But I think what I did learn was a lot about the particulars. And our council has had a few turnovers since I got on council. And I'm really I've only been a councilor for 6 years. I feel like I'm still relatively new at it, but we've had these very different incarnations, which has given me this experience of how do you stay focused? Mm-hmm. How do you move things that I would consider to be progressive things? Like, how do we invest in childcare? How do we get strategic about human services? How do we do that work? But I've had to learn how to do it with different personalities and different incarnations of council. And I have found that to be such a great experience. It's been hard. And especially early on, because I came on council and there are a lot of people who didn't want me there. And and
it's funny, I want to say this because the way that we met was because I kind of timed this on accident in the perfect timing, because I wanted to spotlight Springfield a lot more, which I don't live in anymore, but I'm from, and I live 2 miles away. And when I did was when Christine Lundberg, the mayor at the time, was stepping down, and then Sean was on the city council, Sean Van Gordon, and he stepped up, and then you were running for a seat that you ran against Johannes Tadeo and Chris McAllister. And at one point you had told me, you're like, it's funny because in this race, I'm kind of the conservative.
Yeah, it looked like everybody assumed I was. And I was afraid to run because I thought being an out lesbian, I'd be seen as so fringy, and I was not.
And no, because you were running against somebody that's probably the biggest, or at least one of the most vocal and active Latino activists in Johannes, and then the person that's the most active in the homeless activism, and is a thorn in all of the sides of politicians because he won't let him not take what he wants. Chris McAllister, he's an absolute stud. And I just thought that was so great for me to see, because I saw the way that it works. And you saying that too, your fear of being ridiculed or judged, but it's also looking at these people I don't want to step on their toes of the work they're trying to do. It was such a respectful campaign, and you guys were all different political beliefs, and that was really cool. So looking at your time on the council, what was a couple of specific moments, like wins or challenges, that you feel that they prepared you to operate at the state level. I also want to say one thing that shocked me before you answer is that you had talked about the investments in properties, something like that. Is it the city or the state?
The land banking?
Yes, and it kind of shocked me that you were into that, which is cool because that's where Springfield's different than Eugene. Because a lot of people are like, what? They're going to buy properties? I'm like, no, this is investments for you. These are no-brainer investments. They cannot lose. And so it's like in government investing in Bitcoin. Like they're like, what? And it's like you have to understand that it's literally going to still go up. But anyway, what are some big wins or special moments that'll help you on the council level that's going to go up to the state level?
So we touched on a little bit. I think the work that we've done around housing has given me, because I that's one of the things I ran on for city council, because I'm like, we just need housing, and Springfield's already leaned in, but we have a lot of work to do because we revamped the code. That's happened since I've been on council, which was a very big project to make it even easier for people to build cottage clusters and all of these things. And then I wanted us to get really strategic about housing at all levels, and some of that was affordable housing, and Springfield had said we want it, but we weren't actually working it as a problem. And so by doing the land banking, we were able to have land that was like otherwise like vacant lots or in neighborhoods that, weird shaped lots that people weren't going to buy and build on. And we could leverage that and work with the state, work with local partners like Cornerstone Housing. And then they could partner with used to be Women's Space and now it's Hope and Safety Alliance, which could also get funding for specific beds. So it was like learning how to piece all of that together. Yeah. And what my role was as sort of this driving policymaker to say, we're going to pull it all together. We're going to get staff focused. We're going to do this. So to me, what I learned in that and the successes that we have, we're just starting to see these come online, which feels fantastic because it was a lot of work that nobody saw.
And it has to be because these are tough decisions. I want to say one thing, too, that I learned is that, okay, so one example of how code changes can be dangerous. Like when you have to take these lightly. Like people, I've seen criticism of Sean Van Gordon and maybe yourself at some point because you guys they do things kind of slow. And that, because here's one example. We had that ice storm and then ADUs that had been lifted those codes. And then people literally like maybe died or they couldn't get found because their situations were like tucked behind corners that were not documented anywhere. So there's no code that they were following because they didn't have to build those for a while to make sure we tried that. So my point is that everybody wants change, but it cannot happen immediately. And so unfortunately, but reality wise. And so I think that's something that was, I know why you guys take time to do things and it's been good. I mean, everything that I've seen has been phenomenal. And that doesn't mean that you don't do it. It means that you make sure that you do it right. The
other area that I'm very proud of, and also for a lot of people, it's still moving too slow is, in the time that I've spent on council, I've either been chair or vice chair of the Springfield Economic Development Agency, CEDA. And this is the first moment that I was like, I'm running for this additional office. We should probably be nurturing some new leadership. And so we have a new chair and vice chair for that. But for the past 6 years, that's been a big part of my work. And we have, by just like doing it, like and that had been a project that people had been in, they'd been out, they changed their mind. What are we doing? And I'm like, we're just going to stay focused. We're going to stay focused, and we're going to get this.
Own a bunch of the properties downtown, like David Lovell. So at one point, he was running that chair or that group, and then he was he goes for city or county commissioner, and it's like, bro, you literally profit off the benefits that you're making, the decisions you're making.
Right. I'm really proud of that work.
Anybody that says skin in the game, though, like I don't know if you worked with David Lovell on that board because he was out at that time. Is that correct, or was he still on?
He came on. So when I first got on the CETA board, because there is a seat for the county commissioner, it was Commissioner Burney. So it was Joe Burney was on that, and then David Lovell has come on that board. Prior to that, as a developer, he was somebody who's been, taking advantage of the SDCs and the things that
he's done really good stuff
in place to help develop.
Right. He's done really good stuff with downtown, but the problem that I see with that is like you should accuse yourself from that kind of board when you're going to financially benefit from it. And then he did not.
It definitely makes it challenging to have somebody who's benefiting from that work.
Right. Skin in the game means I'm going to profit from it. Obviously, it does matter. And I do think that people in the Democratic side of politics need to understand that a 3% gross tax on anything is disgusting, because when you put a gross tax, you don't prove that they make revenue. I'm a business owner now, so I'm going to push back on that one. So he didn't say that. I'm just saying that like there's a balance to this, So skin in the game is good, but not when you personally are going to benefit and make the laws. That's not okay. And that's what we see at the national level. And then
I will tell tell you, and this is my opinion,
Sure.
I will say that actually it is not helpful to have people who have this who are like, I'm going to come in and we're going to run this like a business, because it is not like
It's not a business. It's a balanced business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It can make them really rather ineffective because they don't understand this is what it takes to move this through all these government processes and make sure we do all the things. Right. Otherwise, it jeopardizes the project. So if you come in and you're used to being able to like wheel and deal, it can make it really challenging.
Sure. And if you get to on the national level, my dad was one person that was like, well, I want a businessman. I'm like, okay, well, then we need a ton more local government, because those businesses on the federal level are going to destroy us. They're not going to care. I mean, now we're going to go into a direction with AI that we'll have 5 businesses. But anyway, so like total, like of all business. So anyway, we'll move on. The city government is a very hands-on and immediate, while state government can feel distant. How do you carry the voice of Springfield into a system that often feels removed from the day-to-day realities? Because you're not moving to Salem, maybe you'll be going back and forth.
Yeah.
So how will that be different than because at the city level, the people that are approaching you can see them today again, kind of thing. So how would you do that when you're going back and forth between Salem?
Right. Well, first of all, House District 7 is Springfield. And I consider that to be such a gift and it might not always be that way, right? Districts sometimes get chopped up and have a little piece of this and a little piece of that. But House District 7 is Springfield, and Springfield is my home. And I love Springfield, and I've been serving Springfield. So I understand it very deeply in terms of what the issues and concerns are. What has been really helpful about having Rep. Lively in that seat is that he did come out of Springfield government. He was a mayor, he was a city councilor. And at the same time, decisions that are made in Salem make it harder for us often at the local level to do the things we're trying to do, not always intentionally, like when I think of middle housing and some of the work that's happened, but the disconnect between understanding how this rolls out onto a local municipality is real. Like the decisions get made, policy gets passed, laws get made. And, like Measure 111 is one where it's like, we're just going to do this thing. And then we have to figure out how to make it work at the city level or the county level. And it can make it super hard and challenging and get in the way. So
be frustrated. So go ahead.
Yeah. So those are some things that are different. And the other thing that you mentioned too about just like the timing and the connection at the city level, we can take a long time. And you mentioned that we can work a project until we are a problem.
I think it's good
because come back and we can talk about it. But at the state level, they're in session for a certain amount of time and they're trying to move stuff along.
Right.
And so I think that my experience in understanding the differences there and how those things kind of interact and impact each other will be a benefit to Springfield.
And it's super important. And I think that it's kind of like the first line of defense against the federal government when it has an opposition party in power is the city. But the state is fighting the federal government right now. And I try to explain this to young people or people that are just unaware of politics, which could be anyone. That they literally don't understand city, county, state, federal. They don't understand the different levels of government. And right now, without the state of Oregon, a lot of people that I care deeply about would have no rights, would have their rights stripped. So the state is going to be doing things that are going to be like way big, and the city is going to be doing roads, doing those kind of things. But it's the same type of board. Like you said, you worked in that, that's your career. So even out of politics, that's the kind of stuff you've done, working with like AIDS Alliance and then some other ones, so you have that background and that's good. So you're stepping into a seat that was held for years by John Lively, like we mentioned, and I mentioned before, he's delivered on economic development, education, investment, infrastructure locally. What parts of the legacy do you build on, and where do you find that you have a different approach?
So I think a lot of those things are great, and they are conversations that I've had with Rep. Lively, and when I was working at United Way, we were both working on early childhood education, and so there are things that we definitely share. I think one of the things that's different is I identify solidly as a working class Democrat. Like I come from working people in Douglas County.
Me too.
And you'll see if you look at like who's endorsing me and who's like supporting this campaign, it's like unions and working people and firefighters. And so I think that, and while Rep Lively has definitely been a strong voice for labor, particularly like the teachers union thing. I think there's a bit more of that, this blue collar kind of grit that I will probably bring to it, which to me is also part of what I love about Springfield, is I feel like we are a town of working people.
Yeah.
And so those working class issues, affordability, and even when I think about infrastructure, we have some big projects that we're working on, but it's also like sometimes the little things in the neighborhood that make a huge difference about whether or not kids can get to school safely or not. So I think there's going to be some things that are Springfield and we care about that I will definitely continue in my experience with economic development and housing development and those things. And I think that Rep Lively has done a great job. And
for sure.
I think there's going to be this, like, I think I'm going to bring a bit more of just like your everyday roll up your sleeves kind of working class grit to the work.
And I think that's really interesting for you to say, because you said, growing up in Roseburg, I will say the same, that I live in Eugene growing up in Springfield, because I love Republicans. I do. I love people that I disagree with. I have a different strategy on the way that I want it. Not all. There's definitely not all. I don't love all Democrats. But that being said, like, you get this pride. I'm a barber, so I have the same kind of working class attitude. My dad owned a print shop. My mom worked for the state, and she was a social worker, and she was non-political because she was like trying to be kind, because she knew that back then it wasn't nice. So that's really interesting. And what I'm thinking about that is that the time that John Lively was in those positions and being more blue collar, there was so much more of a divide between politics than there is today. Because today people feel emboldened. So I just want to remind people that sometimes when you're frustrated, it's because you're paying attention. It's always been happening. It's been worse.
Always.
I mean, you didn't have a right to be married. So I mean, there's a lot of progress that's happening. And that's not a knock on John Lively. I'm just saying that makes more sense why that would be more successful back then, because nobody was sitting there banging on your door the same way it is today. I'm sure.
I think of myself as, and I've said this to Congresswoman Hoyle, like, I am a daughter of OR4.
Yeah.
Like, I have grown up here, so I understand how purpley it is and what it takes, and how some things that we on the progressive or the left side tend to like claim as our own. And I'm like, those are not necessarily left ideal. Like, everybody wants clean water. Yeah. Everybody wants clean air.
Voters' rights is kind of an interesting one, that the numbers are showing that a lot of Democrats do support voter ID, which I do. I just don't want to get rid of mail-in voting, but
I don't want to get rid of mail-in voting either.
No, I don't like going in public, but I have missed what's been happening on the council lately. But I know there's been a lot of changes, but I talk to people and they're like, Springfield's so conservative. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's like 52% blue or 58% blue or something like that. Like, you're not right. It represents Oregon probably better than Eugene does, because Eugene and Portland, that's one kind of ideology, or that's a lot. Portland's a way different animal than Eugene. And even Eugene is not as liberal as people think. There's a lot of conservatives. That's why people get removed from office, and because they don't get heard, because the representation on the council is like completely liberal, except for Mike Clark, and then you got the moderates. Like, I'm going to try to have a conversation with Randy Groves. I love Randy, because Randy's kind of like he's like literally in the middle, and so anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about the county level. How do decisions that are made by the county commission directly impact the work that you've already been doing? And then how will they affect the work that you'll be doing at the state level?
Oh, so full disclosure, in my day job, I work for the county. I work in human services for the county. So I'm constantly having to be really clear about what hats I'm wearing. But it also gives me, like I say, it's all government all the time. So I have a very clear understanding of how, not only at a policy level when we're trying to work with the county, but how the county works with the state. Because, the county is really the ones doing a lot of the services that the state is required to make sure happens. Mm-hmm. So
real quick, an understanding of like where an issue would want to go, because it can't. Some things on the city level, they're like, that's going to have to be kicked up to the next level.
Right.
That's something I want to overemphasize, because a lot of people don't really have a grasp. I know I didn't. I don't want to be like Trump, where I'm like, nobody knows about this just because I don't. So go on.
Well, and I've had people get very, very angry with me because they feel like the city should be deeply involved in human services, to which I'm like, that's really not a core service of the city. That's what the county and the state are doing. And I see how that's happening. So what we can do as a city is, and I have been trying to find ways to get more funding into human services in all the ways, which is really challenging. So we can support it and we can collaborate and we can help to advocate for funding for those things, but it's not a core service of the city. And it makes people very mad because they're like, you don't care. And I'm like, I care so much. I'm in it all the time.
That you're frustrated. And then, but you also can help them by doing like, I know who I can send you. You can send an email to this person who's you know, somebody that I work with, and you can kick it up the line, you know? And so yeah, that's really something that I've learned from doing the show, from you, from Sean Van Gordon, the mayor, you know, that's running for county commissioner. I have learned so much from him about the systems of government and how they actually work. And in a frustrating way, I talked to him about it on the last episode with him, where I love when, okay, this is going to sound weird. Tragedies lead to opportunities.
Right.
So when tragedy happens, I don't love it, but I love the way that the community comes together. And I love the way that politicians roll up their sleeves and then will tell you stuff that they don't normally say. And Sean was very calculated, which he had to push back on me, and I respect it, because he was like, it's out of respect for the different branches, for the different groups. And you have to pick your words wisely, because if you don't, then there's going to have to be answering my question that was wrong instead of the question that the person's asking. And I was like, bingo, that is amazing. You know, so to understand those systems, you got to be kind of a nerd. You got to be kind of a behind the scenes person. And I love it. You can't just be a figurehead. That's where the executive power positions are probably sometimes good for the charisma, all those.
Right. That's not me. I'm a worker. I tell people I'm a worker. I just want to do the work.
That's good, because my mom, state worker, was understated. She was like, let's just stay the course, do things. And she was calculated and careful. The charisma at the top is the person that's the mouthpiece. All the people did the work for them before that, you know? And so that's something that I just needed to learn.
Yeah. And some of that charisma is chaos, right? It's like,
yes. Yeah. I mean, we know that on the federal level.
Yeah.
You know, and so, I mean, it's on the state level. It's funny, like the governor Kotek and Kate Brown. Oh, I shouldn't even said her name, because a lot of people just cringed, but like, there's a point where I don't know how these people are so mad about so much different stuff. And then they can't tell me if it's about lumber, it's about this or that, then I can get behind your argument. But it's like, oh, I hate her. And I'm like, why? Like, what do you mean? I think she's actually kind of conservative for a liberal. Like, I don't know. Anyway, and the stuff that she did early on with Roseburg was like, she's doing a lot to make sure that it wasn't just going to Portland. I mean, that was my take. So you've worked extensively with Sean Van Gordon. We talked about him a lot today. What has the working relationship actually looked like in practice? And we kind of just mentioned this. So what does that tell you about how effective coordination between city county leadership can be? And you know, are you pushing for him, because his county commission seat is huge. It's going to swing the balance of potentially, because Thomas as well.
Okay, so I love this question, and it's just going to be a vomit. Now all our business will be out in public.
Sure.
But I tell Sean, I think we were very trauma bonded because we've been
from government work.
Government work together. And I will say that, you know, he endorsed an opponent of mine when I ran for council, and I was like probably Leonard and I were probably 2 lone votes that didn't vote for him. So I joke and say we've balanced our karma. That's good. We're clean now. Yeah. And then we've developed such a strong working relationship, and we often have very different ideas about, and some of them have been like yelling, like from me, like not from him, you know, where I've been like, you are wrong and here's why.
Yeah.
But we have developed such a strong working relationship, and one of the advantages is he hears from people that will never call me. Right. He sits in a space and I hear from people that will never call him.
Yeah.
And so when we're working an issue, I can be like, he can say, what are you hearing? And I'm like, well, here's where people are coming from. And I'm saying those people, I don't know what's going on with the folks that have a different view. So help me to see that. So I'm seeing that, because I really want to see the whole picture. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And we've also, we both have like this passion for history and take the work so seriously. Mm-hmm. And that is kind of what we've built around. And I will say that, you know, my spouse has been like on the front row to watching this relationship evolve. And just recently she said, you know, you and John over time, he's learned a lot from you and you've learned a lot from him.
And that's the point.
And that's the point.
The thing I admire about him is that he literally will endorse candidates that are on the extremes of both parties. Like he looks at the individual, not the party affiliation. Sometimes people, because I don't know, you are in a nonpartisan seats. I think, is the representative nonpartisan?
No, it's very partisan. So it starts to get
nonpartisan seats like city council or mayor. there is still a core value, and I think that sometimes when you really walk lockstep with a party, which nobody does fully, but like when you really try to navigate that kind of a certain way, it can lead to doing things that you think people want and not what you think they need. And so that's tough. And I do think that that's a quality he has that's good, and so I don't want to ask if you've worked with David Van Gordon or David Lovell, because you told me you worked at the county, and he's being investigated for like targeting his county workers. So we'll just skip that one and he can go to court. But
I will tell you, and I will tell the world, like I have Sean's lawn sign in my yard. I am supporting him. I'm somebody who was encouraged as he was evaluating whether to run. I've worked with him, and I've been able to tell my colleagues, on the county, like he takes the work seriously.
That's why I'm spotlighting how bad his opponent is. I mean, it's literally like, I have my right to say this, and I hope I don't get targeted by somebody at that level. That would be insane, because at that point you don't support democracy. So Sean has to win this seat.
He is respectful. He is polite. He is, he is a decent guy.
Speaking of that, the next question is, between these two, Sean Van Gordon and David Lovell, how important is the outcome of that race for Springfield's future? And specifically, what changes depend on who wins? I mean,
I will tell you that for just sitting in my city councilor role, so it is the relationship between the city council and the county commission is important. And we have some very big projects that have not moved because of the lack of kind of work and effectiveness because of the county commission. We're still working to redevelop Glenwood. We'd still really like to move the transfer station so that we can develop in that area. And then there's also the area in Gateway, which has some transportation challenges because of all of the development that's happened there. We really need good partners at the county that understand that. Yeah. And that has been a bit lacking. Sure. So having like a strong, trusted relationship and people who understand how we need to partner is helpful. Like we have some really good relationships staff to staff, and I have good relationships with some of the county commissioners, but having Sean in that seat will just for Springfield, I think will be a big benefit.
Yeah. So the transfer station, do you mean the LTD station?
No, I mean the dump.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was going to say, because okay, good. The dump.
Yeah. I mean, moving the dump so that to fully develop. Because imagine, we'd like to develop that whole area, and it'd be nice.
That one is always so contentious because people are like, we don't want this. I'm like, you have to have one. Like you have to have, and then there's things that are so
people tough. Love where it's at. So I get that, and it'd be nice to have it move somewhere else so that whole area can develop.
The bus situation is an interesting thing for Eugene that we can talk about another time. But like how much people are mad about the MX, and I'm like, I wish that you would see the numbers about how much bus riding leads to revenue for businesses. It doesn't hurt business, and I mean, I think that I don't really want to say this, but but I think that the LTD needs to do a better job of collecting the taxes, because I don't know how any business owner knows that they're supposed to pay it, because it's not on TurboTax, it's not on all these other things, and so they don't get paid out. So there's their problem. They don't need nobody
they need
knows,
a tax collector.
Nobody knows that they're supposed to pay it. Well, it just needs to be included in everything else. I don't understand why it's not, because there's a lot of that. And it's too long and wonky to get into. But like Willamette Lane being a hybrid between, it's like they're a private, they're not a nonprofit business or anything. So and they're not government owned, and so they're collaborations, which I think are good. I'll have Sean come out and explain that sometime. But okay, so there's also a county commissioner race in North Eugene. North Eugene to the coast. It's a huge ward that my good buddy Thomas Sheard is running. The current person is Ryan Senega. I don't know a lot about him. I do know that he's kind of what I've been talking about. He's a conservative, business first kind of person. Thomas is one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. And he met Ryan, and this was I don't know if it was off the record. He didn't say that, but he did tell me if Ryan Senega and I met in different pretenses, we would be friends. He's a really cool guy. And that's the kind of person Thomas is. And that's the kind of person Thomas needs to be in government. Like why he needs to be in government. I will push back a little bit that I haven't seen anything with Ryan Senega that we've seen with David Lovell. Like he's not being investigated for targeting his employees on the county and that kind of stuff. And so I think that he's a decent human being, And so because some of the stuff that have happened, it's like we have to fight against certain candidates. And if I can't say this out of fear of retaliation, then we've lost our democracy. So I'm going to say it. And if David Lovell is listening, you have your views and I have mine, so how do these decisions, not just in Springfield, but how do these decisions on the county level, how will they affect all of our county? Because I know you spend time, and it's funny how people are like, I never go to Eugene. I'm like, you do too, and it's like it affects all of us.
Right. So here's the thing. Here's how I think of it, and might help people that are thinking of it. The county commission needs to do the business of the county. So even though you might have a representative that's from your area, they're not like the king or queen of the city or the king and queen of North Eugene. They need to work with their colleagues at the county level to do the business of the county. And so that's why it matters to us, because, there are decisions that affect us, whether it's, around the clean lane, or whether it's around, road development, or whether it's around, public safety outside of the urban growth boundary, those sorts of things. Those do impact us. And so having a county commission that's functional and that understands how government works and is, working to not only represent the constituents they represent, but to bring those voices in to those group decisions that are being made, and to be able to advocate at the state level or at the federal level for things that are needed countywide. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's so important who's in those positions. And so even if you don't live in an area, to be like, oh, I do care about what the makeup of my county commission is. Mm-hmm. And I want to have diverse voices, but I want to have them be functional, diverse voices. Like I really do want, I feel like Commissioner Buck represents this rural understanding of things. Right. And is different from, say, in like Commissioner Trigger in a very urban, very blue area. So having those different voices is really important, and they can't be adversarial, right? They need to be able to pull the train together so that we get what's best for the county.
And you don't have to agree with people, but you have to listen to them.
Right.
And so it's like, I just think that that's so important, and I do believe, and I've had a lot of conversations with Alan Stout. He's the city councilor in Springfield, and he's very conservative and he's very Catholic. And we are not just now we don't just work together and have a working relationship because of the podcast and some of the little light work I do with politics. We're friends. I mean, he comes to my barbershop, even though he has very little hair, but he comes to my barbershop. He's doing commercials that I've made. He talked to me about how Catholicism, to him, he was like, do you know about St. Joseph? I'm like, no, who's that? He's like, Joseph and Mary. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And he's like, Joseph represents stepfathers. And I was like, our step parents, and I was like, wow, like he really thought about me, so like we're friends in a way that we have so many different views, but we talk about it. And he's like, wow, thank you. I've never been told this perspective. That's what a board is for, And so it's like, I've told him that I see representation as one of the most important things on the city, state, all these boards. Representation is so important. And so I will say that I don't want to make it sound like I don't think that there should be business leaders, but they shouldn't be profiting off of it, because you have to have all of it. Like I said, I'm against a gross tax, like the people's rebate. I voted against it because I was like, no, you're not. You have never worked in business and you don't understand. Like I've heard things like, I don't know, I can't speak on a specific restaurant, but a lot of restaurants have an 8% margin. So when you give 3% to Visa, then you give 3% to this whatever bill, then what do they get, 2? Like, how is that fair? And so on the gross tax. So I just think it's important to have representation across the board. Right. That's why
you're part of a small business, right? And so when I say small business, and I often clarify this because I think people think that there's one business voice, and they'll say the chamber says this, and this is not to disparage chamber, but there's a lot of small businesses that I support that are not part of the chamber. Yeah. That's not, they're seen, they can't afford it. They're small. They're like
first year. It's $285 a year.
Yeah. And so, but those folks, so their voices need to be heard too, and they need to be considered. And often when we say business, it's still the bigger voices that take up the space. And I think
Chamber of Commerce, they don't think small business. You're probably right, but like I think that it's both. I mean, a small business can be like 2 to like 200 people. It's still small, right. But then when people talk about $3 million in revenue, that doesn't mean $3 million in profit. I mean, I don't want to get confusing, but like people talk about like torts and like all that kind of stuff. It's like they didn't get $10 million in that lawsuit. They got 2 because there's caps on that kind of stuff, because business owners have put that in to where they're like, nope, we can't have that. That's it. I don't want to get confusing, but
I often think think of, I had a grandfather who worked in the woods, who was a logger, and he had what's called a cutting crew. And so he was a small business owner who employed 5 or 6 other people, and then they would basically, get hired on by logging companies to go out and do some of the more dangerous work. And so I think of what that experience was like for him. Like, he's working, he's still a small business. He's not a member of the chamber.
Yeah.
Deeply embedded in the timber industry. And so my understanding of how the economics of that work come from like that lived experience of that, as opposed to like,
and it's all bigger. It's all parts of the bigger picture. I mean, it's kind of like what we're talking about today, the city, state, county, the city, county, state, federal. It's all part of the pie. I mean, I want to say and make sure that we point this out. Both of us are fans of the Chamber of Commerce. It just doesn't represent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was on the board of the Tri-County Chamber of Commerce, and I loved it so much.
Yeah, I had a guy come in the other day. I was cutting his hair, and I talked politics a little bit because I do that. That's why I have to own my own business, because other people are like, I don't know, but I told him what I did, and he told me he does construction work, and he has this new warehouse that he can show people kind of the work that he does with walkthroughs, kind of like when you're looking at a manufactured home, they can have a little corner of it. And it was great. And this guy was like, dude, if you need, man, I'll pay y'all. He like offered to pay. He's like, I'll split it with you, the chamber. He's like, you got to get involved. And I was telling him, I'm like a liberal dude. And he's like, he didn't really say what he was, but he really didn't have to. Like, I kind of knew. And he was like, no, you're really cool, dude. Like, we need to be involved. And I'm like, see, this is what happens when you talk to people. Like, when you don't fear, that just have conviction in what you believe and don't try to change them right away. Because this guy's like, I don't want to change you. I want your voice to there and challenge me. You know what I mean? Because like, I might learn from you, dude. And it's like, I don't want to, and so I think it was really an honor. And he's like, you need to, he was like so adamant. It's like the one thing he pushed, he's like, you need to get on the chamber because we have so much fun, and so it is something that like every little expense, I'm like, I scoff at it. And so I understand both sides of everything. I'm like, I don't like when mandated stuff, like when they're like, I have to pay for that. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want it. I don't need to pay for it. But I mean,
I love that somebody's offering to bring you in, because it is. There are lots of different voices, and I hope that we made that clear. Like, I support the chamber and I support those businesses, but I also, there's so many that aren't, and yours is one of them.
Yeah,
like,
not yet. I will, but I mean, it's easy for me not to pay for those things when I don't make a profit because I'm so new, and I was working by myself the last couple months, and I've had to deal with a lot. So if you need a haircut, go to Stutz Cuts Barbershop. But it's really coming to a place where I really love it. Actually, I have a quick announcement on that. We're going to be doing color now. I hired somebody that's phenomenal. So she has her own little area. I got my shampoo sink dialed in. We're going to be offering color services. That's on my website. I'm colorblind. I'm not going to do that. But I will still be cutting hair, and she's going to be handling. She cuts hair and does color. She's full service. So we might even be doing some eyebrow waxing and some stuff that she's going to be a real huge asset for the business.
Fancy.
So it'll be good. You should come by sometime and check it out.
I will.
So, okay, let's see. Housing, homelessness, and public safety all show up at the city level first, but require state support. Based on what you've seen firsthand, where is the disconnect right now, and where would you push for that to change in Salem?
Oh, well, I think what you said, housing, homelessness,
and then public safety, so policing.
Well, I think the homelessness work kind of lands with the county, and so but we are a part of that, and I have been a part of the Human Services Commission and the Poverty and Homelessness Board in my city council role, because we do need to make sure we're representing Springfield and we're making sure needs are met. As you and I have talked about, like prior to coming to work at the county, I worked in nonprofit for most of my career.
Nonprofit
and
industrial complex.
A lot of those relationships have paid off in terms of, like, we have some organizations that have moved to Springfield to provide services and stuff at Springfield because they're like, oh, okay, Springfield they're developing over there. There's land, there's all of the things. So there's that. But I think I'll talk specifically around housing and how that can be both great and a challenge. So Springfield has already leaned in pretty hard to, like, we want housing. We want people to be able to build here. We want people to be able to live here. Now, we don't have a lot of land. We're like sandwiched between two rivers. The challenge that we have is we're going to have to do a lot of building and infill, which not everybody loves, because a lot of people are like, not my Springfield. My Springfield was this sprawling, wide streets, big lots. And so we've leaned into the ADUs, the cottage clusters, and I'm starting like just in my neighborhood, which
You
is
have to, you know.
yeah, and I'm near Mackenzie Willamette Hospital, and I will tell you that just in like a 2-block radius, there's probably 6 ADUs or people who are building on parts of their lot. I love to see it. Like I love it because that means that people are going to be living in a neighborhood where they can walk to the pool and they can go to the park and they can get on the bus. And so that infill, we already have a lot of the infrastructure. So finding a way to support that. But what's been challenging coming from the state is that one, they keep coming up with new ways to tell us how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent the last couple of years trying to lobby up in Salem saying, can everybody just time out? Like, just hold on. We will get there if you will stop giving us new regulations.
Yeah.
That did not happen.
Sure.
So what'll happen is they'll be like, we've figured out how we're going to fix a thing in Portland. And then it gets rolled out to the state. And the way that hits in Springfield or the way that hits in La Pine or wherever is very different than the way it hits in Beaverton, Tigard, and Portland. And I think everybody knows that. But we have like our little planning team that are working on the stuff that the council has said, this is where we're going to focus. And then these new regulations and things get rolled out and everything has to stop. They have to do a new timeline. They have to hire consultants to help us figure out what the master plan is. So it doesn't come with money. It just comes with direction. And so it actually, in some ways, it's designed to potentially help us, but it gets in the way because we, instead of saying, Springfield's doing a great job. They know what they need. How do we support that? It's more like, we're going to tell you what you ought to be doing. Right. And that's where it makes it hard. And so
your experience on the city level is going to be really beneficial at that next level because you remember that, and so you remember that kind of work and you're going to fight for the people. You're not going to forget and then turn into the, you don't just become the now I get to be the naysayer.
I still am going to live in the same house and the neighbors are still going to show up on my porch and say, I have a thing to talk to you about.
I think that the ADUs and its accessory dwelling units, and I think that what people need to understand is I produced a podcast for a short time and I had to give it up because it was too much stress. But it was the Eugene Housing podcast or Eugene Real Estate podcast. Ooh. And one of the guests had said something, and it's hosted by Vince Casey. It's really good. I don't know if he's still doing it, but they said that like you need to understand that these people that own these properties that people rent from, they only own 4 or 5 or 8. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm less concerned with somebody's investments than I am with someone's home. So I just need to make sure that people have enough homes that are at a reasonable price. And so the reason I say this is that with these ADUs, it is a trade-off because it sometimes gets kind of wonky in the back corner of a lot. But at the same time, sometimes those are the owner of that home that lives, and then they have a grandma suite or whatever you call it. That's a business model for them. So it's like, this is actually business. And so you have to have that balance. I think that the biggest concern isn't the people that have 5 to 7 properties, because a lot of those people are retired and then they run these houses and then the people rent them. And that's giving a service to the community that they make a profit from. That's great. But that being said, I don't know the numbers, but you might know more, but Airbnb owns like a crazy amount of the vacant lots that are in our community because they're still considered vacant because they can be rented, but they can only be rented on short term. We need to kick them out of our community. Airbnb, they need to not exist. And they can exist. Maybe they can have like parts of town, or there could be like certain, there's like this area can have this many and that's it. And then there's going to be, in order to do that, there's going to be like, you pay $200,000 for the permit to get it. So ridiculous things to get them out because they literally are killing our community, Airbnb. And so I just think that it needs to be, and if Airbnb comes at me with retaliation, I want to remind them that this is democracy.
Well, I'm going to generalize it to say like these outside investors into housing.
They own city blocks.
And I will say that the house across the street from us was bought by this person who is a developer, Dylan, who does a lot of creative developing a few years back. And I was so excited because I was like, he's going to do cool stuff. And we talked about it. And then it ended up that he needed to sell that piece of property because he was working on other property and things went up and it didn't pencil. So I was over there. He came to tell me, which was very sweet. He's like, counselor, I can tell you I'm going to sell this. And I said, all right, I'm not the boss of you. Sure. However, I'm going to ask you from the bottom of my soul, please do not sell that to like an outside, please sell it to a family, sell it to an older person.
Can you choose though? Can you choose not to sell to someone?
you entertain offers,
I
right? So
know.
you can entertain offers. So I'm like, if you get a big cash offer from some out of state person, please, just like, please.
Yeah.
And it went, and the person who bought it was this young guy who was going through a divorce, who has young kids, and he's since repartnered. Now there's little boys learning to ride their bicycles in the street. And I appreciate that, because that's my Springfield, right? That's what we want. And so just the outside investors overall make it really challenging for people to get in the housing market or to be able to invest in neighborhoods, and it can change the whole way our neighborhoods are. So those are the kind of things that I'm like, yeah. It's not just Airbnb, but it's just outside investors who are buying these up and using them for rentals or whatever, as opposed to letting people raise their families.
I'm trying to see if I can find any information on it. I'll do an episode about that. I'll bring on he wears an attorney for them. I'll ask him. It'll be contentious. He's great, but well, God, I can't remember his name right now. Anyway, yeah, I'll get into that. He was the president. What is his name? Gosh dang it, I'm running a blank. He's from the East Coast. He moved out here. He's great. He was the president.
And the realtors want it. They also want to be able to do all the things in all the places and let people do what they want 100%. With their properties.
100%. And on that note, I had a funny conversation with Sean about like business and housing. Not really housing, more business. I'm like, how many calls have you got for Chick-fil-A? People were happy or mad that you put that in. He's like, I didn't put it in. I love it when people say, why did they put that there? I'm like, who's they? Like the blind store over by Thurston. People in the Thurston Neighborhood Watch group, they're like, why would they do this? I'm like, who's they? That's the business that did this. That's not the mayor. That's not the city councilor. And they're like this miraculous they in government that chooses business. It's not how it works. It's not. And it's good that it's not
how it works. And see, it's perfect because, I am an out lesbian. And so I make choices about where I spend my money, and I'm not the boss of the world.
I have mixed feelings. I have to crush your soul here. I did go to Chick-fil-A for the first time the other day because I was like, I went in Denver because I wanted to try it. I'm with you. I haven't gone for that same reason. And I'm a closeted lesbian, but so I went and I went to Chick-fil-A in Denver, and we were going to go, and there was a gay pride rally going on, protest more or less going on. I'm like, maybe not now, because I was like, I don't want to go in my town. I don't think it was there yet. But the other day,
you don't want me to see you, but you still wanted to give it a try.
I was like, I want to try it once. I'm curious because I want to know what everybody's freaking out about. And I actually share your values on like boycotting with my money, but at the same time, I don't have any. Second of all, I don't really like to do that too much because you should I will. The press protest this is you excluded. The best protest at Chick-fil-A is that they have openly gay people will just make out in the lobby. That's my favorite. But I just think that it's tough because I do really, really want to make sure that people aren't using there's revenge politics, and then there's stuff where we can't shut each other out.
Right.
So they have no reason to be making such a statement against. They're selling chicken. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? Is their business is to make sure that gay people don't get married? That's insane. They put it's like $100 million a year that they put into anti-gay things. But I tried it the other day and it was not good. It was mediocre. And I was like, so you're not missing much. People love it. I haven't had their biscuits though, because I gotta say, you go to Popeyes and you get the biscuits, and you're like, dude, I'm gonna come here every day. So with the little honey on it. I don't know. I had to try it because I do believe in not letting boycotts don't have to be forever in some ways, but there are certain things you're like, I'm definitely not going to give them a market share of my or a share of my revenue, and that's not or my pocketbook. It's not going to happen because then
there are plenty of other people who are, to your point, that's democracy, right? So I don't have to I can manage my own business, and I don't have to tell everybody else how to manage theirs.
I'm both ways on this because it's a fun, snarky thing to do. It's a fun thing to do. It's a fun thing to be like, nope, not my money. And it makes you feel empowered. And I love that. And I think you should continue that. And I will too. I'm never going to go there again. But I wanted to go through, see how it went, but I just don't go as far as some people when it comes to boycotts. I love Nike because Nike's a local business.
Well, and here's that's how I feel about Bimart, right? So sometimes it's not about the anti. It's about I'm just going to make a choice to go to someplace like Bimart that I really love and want to support as local and involved.
You know what's funny about that? You'll love this. Okay, so my dad and I were talking, and in his respect, he and I have had contentious conversations for years. I have that same mug. We had those conversations for years, and he's starting to see that I've put in the work, that I've had to educate myself about these things, and I've had to back up, and I've had to have mixed views that went against what I thought I knew. And so he asked me one time, we're driving by Bimart, happened to be, and he goes, what do you think? No, sorry, we were just on the phone. He goes, what is the guy? Mamdami. He goes, what do you think about Mamdami? And I knew the first thing I said, the guy that's now the mayor of New York. And I said, Dad, I'm really focused on my business, which he got giddy. And then I said, but I will say, and they pulled this out of my ass. I'm like, every time we drive by a Bi-Mart, you say, that's Bi-Mart. Bi-Mart's employee owned. And you love it. Okay. The people want more of that. That's what Mom Dami is to me. And he was like, okay. I'm not scared now. Because he's a socialist. And I'm like, no, dude, it's a shared, we're sharing the revenue here and we're sharing the luxuries that people, so we need to make sure that happens. And so that was a really huge moment where I was like, because my dad gets giddy about Bi-Mart. He was like, you should go there, you should work there. He's like, don't go to college because then you'll never listen to me again. But I mean, he didn't want me to go to college, and my mom was so disappointed. She had a double master's. She was very educated. And then I just kind of felt like I got that from them, and I chose to go for trade school, and that's the best thing that I've ever done. And so I think that everybody needs to pick their own approach. Just make sure that there's going to be a job at the end, that there's an opportunity that comes from it, because no college is going to help you get a job. You have to help you. You have to be creative. You have to be unique. You have to be driven, all that stuff. And so at any degree, it doesn't matter if it is a trade even. I mean, there were so many people that didn't finish beauty school. I mean, you'd look over and there'd be this people having breakdowns, the women shaving their heads, just doing the Britney Spears. And then, and it was tough, so that motivated me, that I was like, I have to finish this because I'm a chaotic train wreck myself. I don't want to shave my head in the middle.
I love this story. And I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. One, I graduated early from high school and wanted to go right into college. And in the end, it ended up taking me like 20 years to get through my undergrad. But I had another grandfather who was a truck driver, who was an 18-wheel truck driver. And when I was like sharing with them, like, I'm going to graduate early and I'm going to go up and do this thing, he was so disappointed that I was going to go to college. Yeah. And it speaks to coming from like this really working class background, because he was like, you need to eat. Okay. And then finally he got to a place like, okay, fine, but you should have a trade to fall back on. And one of the ones that they suggested was that I go to beauty school and I get a trade to fall back. I did not do that because I was like, I don't have this, like,
it's hard. I'm
to not craftsy like that. Like, I can't even like cut my own nails, but I just remember the conversation. I remember his face, and I remember he's like, oh, we've raised her and she's going to go to college and she's not going to have a real job. And I'm like,
The frustrating thing for me though is the balance. This is all balance because you go to trade school and you're less likely to have good benefits unless you work for like a state. I mean, I don't know the whole way it works, but a lot of these
get into the building trades and you have a nice union job. And
the union thing cracks me up, because people that are anti-union are on unions, and then they're like, well, I deserve it, these other people don't. I'm like, that kind of attitude in politics needs to go. That's the part of the conservative party, first of all, because both sides have it, that they're like, that attitude needs to go. If you believe in freedom, it's not just your freedom, it's other people's freedom as well.
The collective,
not you, but like just
collective of a union, I think, is just fantastic.
Exactly. Now they need to be regulated. They need to have, and they need to be regulated. But like the teachers union and the police union, they're out of control. Like, in my opinion, like, they're out of control. I really believe it.
I got a daughter who's a teacher, and I don't know. We'll have to go have some beers and talk about it.
I don't drink beer. I'm an alcoholic, so it's been 16 years. No, but I'll go to the bar. But
I'll go have Diet Pepsi with you.
One of my good friends, and this is nuanced, and I want people to understand this, because nothing's definitive in my mind. Like, everything is nuanced. So Brandon Ferguson is now the president of the school board in Springfield. And he is extremely perfect for that position, because he will fight to the bitter end for the rights of his union. That being said, some of the things that he's expecting, because he knows how to lobby, is going to be extreme. I hear this and I'm like, dude, I have no insurance, and so it's like, why is it that this job has this insurance and then my job has zero? So like, there needs to be something that's done for a union for trade workers.
I completely agree with you.
And it's so irritating when you have county workers that are making $120,000 a year talking to someone that has a fast food job that makes 20, that they're like, maybe you need to get a better job. And I'm like, see, that's what you went to school for, because there's actually debt. So this is a nuanced conversation that people can't really explain in 2 minutes. Right. So like your grandpa, you're saying, my dad saying, like, you need to be careful if you're going to go to college, because you need to think about what your plan is, because all you're going to do is get corrupted if you're not strong-minded when you're going in there. And I agree with that. And especially at this point, now we see that colleges are, and I'm not saying that just because I didn't go. I wish I would have gone. I didn't go because I was a failure.
It's not too late. You still could.
I'm thinking about doing it. I mean, I want to go for political science.
We have a great community college right here.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go for political science and also on communications. Those would be my two things, because my dream is to like literally be on CNN, and just be one of those dudes that get paid to do this, and that's what I'm going to keep pursuing. And I don't do it big enough, but that's what's going to be coming in the next couple of years. Is I'm going to try to get bigger up people on the state level. You'll be at the state level, so you'll be one to come on. So I want to keep growing with what I'm doing, so that I can make sure that the people at the bottom have a voice. Like you were saying, go to the next level. Mm-hmm. But it just I mean, it's such a tough decision for each individual if it's the right move, because it is astronomically expensive. Now, the 2-year degrees that are basically paid for if your family doesn't come from wealth. But there's people that fall through the cracks there, the middle class stuff, it's hard. I mean, my family divorced, 2 mortgages. So on paper, no, there's no help because you have 2 houses. I'm like, yeah, but we don't live together. Like, there's a reason, they both individually worked hard to succeed. And it took my mom a lot longer because she was a woman in the 80s. But at the same time, it's like they did well. My mom went the state route because she hated her job because she did it for the benefits and she did it for the security. And so I'm like, I learned from that because she was such a cog in the machine that I feel like sometimes she was like, she loved parts of her job, but the meetings and all that stuff, I said this at the beginning of the show, the DPLC, they never get mad at me for not going to meetings and all that stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to go to a meeting about a meeting. I'm just not going to do it. It's not going to happen. And she was one reason that I did that. My dad was like against it. And I understand why. He was so happy when I chose to go to barber school, but it's not because of doing what he wanted. It's because doing what worked for me. Because I literally love everybody in the community. And so anybody can come in. And then I'm also simultaneously rarely intimidated by them in a way that like, I get that people don't have to, I'm so unique that people can't possibly be like me. meaning like I can't expect them to be because I wouldn't want them to be, and so it's like I get that other people are going to be unique too, and so it's a rare breed the way that my brain functions, and it's not necessarily good. It's a blessing and a curse, but it's a tough conversation. I think that there's merit to the people that are like pushing you to not go that route if you're not sure.
Right. And my spouse works at a wholesale plant nursery and loves it. And so as far as she's concerned, like like meetings and the things I do, she's like, I can't, I don't, what? Like I get to like walk around with my coffee. I get to do real work. My body feels it at the end of the day. And I said, but you won't always be young and spry.
I will.
Will you always be young?
No, I'm 40, I think I worry about that. It's like, what do I do at 70, And
but you mentioned something that I want to go back to is that I 100% agree with you around the insurance and retirement. And this has been something that I've been talking about as I've been having conversations with folks about running for the state office, is that there are some industries like childcare workers and caregivers, your industry, these industries that we consider to be like those lifeline, the people that didn't get to stop working during COVID, right? And no, they don't have the very minimum we could do for those folks who work in those farm workers is give them like insurance and retirement.
I mean, it's kind of funny. This goes both ways. So what you're saying about COVID, I worked 2 months. I wasn't able to work. County workers were working from home and getting paid the same amount. And then this is, again, the teachers union. One thing I'll say, that's where it was like a little tricky, that they're like, we shouldn't have to work this. And I'm like, dude, this is insane. Some of the stuff people are expecting. And you should go back and watch my episode with Zach Bissett, because he was on the school board and he voted against his wife, who's a teacher, who was like, and everybody was mad at her. And it's like there's this lynch mob that comes after people. And this is just my perspective.
Yeah.
There's probably less. I don't know the whole story. I'll be clear. But it's just be careful in like targeting people that we want to see them suffer in any area of government. Not you, because I know that you have that heart. People on the left right now, I mean, it's vicious. And I know that they're hurt, and I know that they're scared and they feel defeated almost. So they'll fight to the bitter end. I'm like, you're not helping. You're not helping. What you're doing is you're losing elections because of the fact that you're like, I will destroy these people. And I can't speak for the right, because those people have already decided that if I'm not a Christian, then I'm a heathen. Even though I am a Christian, they don't let me be one because I don't do it their way. So that, like a lot of them. So there's problems on both sides. There's also people that are conservative. I mean, free speech. I mean, I watched a documentary last night about George Carlin. He's not a political person. He's like, you guys are both wrong, and people need to remember that it's all these perspectives matter, and all of them have to be included. So it's tough. So we're hitting an hour. So I'm probably just going to get out of here. Kori Rodley for state representative. What ward is it? District is it? What's the
House
number?
District 7 in Springfield.
So and there's going to be a lot of opponents in the May ballot. So if you get
there are two others in the primary that are running for the Democrats. There's one person who's running unopposed for the Republicans, so he's going to be all primed and ready after the primary. I will get one night's sleep after the primary before we head to the general.
Yeah. Do you think that voting rights will be changed by November, like federally? Because they're talking about the act that would eliminate
vote by mail.
Voting. Yeah, which is
I don't know. Honestly, we are living in such there are things that have happened that I would have never thought would happen.
That's a good point, because we have no idea, because Iran.
Right, but I know that there's a concerted effort in Oregon. We love our vote by mail. It works really well. We've had it for decades. So I think that most of us are going to fight for that.
I will say this, and then I don't want to make a dark dystopian prediction, but if we're paying $15 a gallon for gas and they get rid of mail-in voting and then Trump is the president forever, then I don't think we're going to have a president anymore, because we'll be in the streets. But
that's how I feel about busing, right? You were talking about the transit. And I'm like, at some point, if we don't invest in this, in bikes and buses and all of the things, right now it'd be really nice to ride a bus instead of paying $7 a gallon for gas.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that it's like I can see. I've listened to a bunch of podcasts last night, trying to fall asleep. And it's pretty dystopian, like where we're heading. This war with Iran, 22% of the world's oil, it goes through that strait that's being blocked by Iran. And Trump started this. There's no getting out of it that it's his fault. So it could go well, because Iran has been a menace for many, many, many decades. But it's just wild.
And I'm a little bit seasoned, so I'm like, wait, haven't we been here at least twice before in my adult life? I feel like we're
I just don't like how no leader, it's making us less safe. I don't care what anyone says. When he says, you know what, I'm going to take Cuba, I'm just going to take it. It's just what is happening? These decisions have to be made with disdain, with I don't want to do this, but we have to. You cannot he's literally playing risk.
And with your residents, your citizens, your country behind you, which he does not have.
No.
It's one thing when we went to World War II and everybody was aligned. It's a different thing.
People don't understand the reason that he doesn't care anymore if the Republicans are backing is because we're not going to have elections anymore. So in November, I don't think there'll be an election. I think that they're going to change the rules, going to take all the votes from the states to the federal level, and they're going to just flip it however they need. I don't think the last election was clear, and I don't think that this in 2000 was fixed. There's a chance that Democrats have done it too at the federal level. At the federal level, I'm talking about. And I've had conservatives in my chair before at the shop, and I've asked them, what about Oregon's elections do you not trust? At the Secretary of State level. And I should do an episode about that, because they had some valid arguments, and then they had some that were just out of control. They were just loopy. They couldn't prove anything. So you can have a gut feeling, but if you can't back it up with facts, it's not true. So you have to be careful. But I really want people to understand that what's on the table right now is legislation to remove mail-in balloting, have all of the states' counts, the voter rolls, to go to the federal level, and then the federal government decides how your election goes in your state. That is fascism 101. Yep. And so if we're not careful, then that's it. That's America. That's gone. That's the end of our democracy. So people are it's not happening. It hasn't happened yet. It's happening right now. And it could
is happening, which is why it matters. And I say elections have consequences. It matters who we vote for, who we put in office, if they're staying in their lane, or who they're aligned to, or are they willing to fight for the things we believe in here in Oregon,
Right. And I don't care what party it is. If you're on the Epstein list and you're guilty of something, you need to go to prison or worse. And if you're making these decisions to fight against democracy, you need to get kicked out of office. That's just the way it is. We don't care about party, especially a lot of the people on the left. They don't want to win. They want justice.
Well, it should be country over party, right?
100%. And I believe that you have that in your heart. So thank you so much for talking to me,
Kori. It's so good to see you.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. So I'm going to be paying close attention, and I wish you well in the election.
Thank you.
Yep.